Hey there, listeners. One more reminder. With over 6,000 downloads of this podcast, we have 2 reviews. Get yourselves busy. Go review us on Apple Podcasts or at nationalland.podbean.com. Put those reviews in. Let us know what you think of the show. Good or bad, we're going to read those on our next episode, and we will be choosing our favorite reviews to give free National Land Realty gear in March. We will be selecting this in March. That means you are only weeks away from National Land swag. Welcome to episode number 33 of the National Land Realty Podcast, where we discuss all things land. Our goal here is to inform, educate, and entertain those of you who own land or are interested in the buying and selling of land throughout the United States. My name is Mac Christian, and I am the Chief Marketing Officer here at National Land Realty. I will be your host for this episode. In this episode, I'm talking with land professional Jason Miller from Jackson, Mississippi. Jason also happens to be an award-winning television producer and has created television shows for NBC Sports, ESPN, Discovery Channel, A&E, National Geographic, the Sportsman Channel, Outdoor Channel, and My Outdoor TV. I'm about to run out of breath. There are more. What that means is that Jason knows his stuff when it comes to photography and video production. When selling your land, you need to capture the attention of prospective buyers. And the single most effective way to do that is through quality photography, video, and technology like National Land Realty's Land Tour 360. As an expert, Jason Miller walks us through this process of how to tell the visual story of land. Now sit back and enjoy. I'm sitting here with Jason Miller, and this is a unique experience given Jason's background. Jason, you've created shows for ESPN, Whitetail Country, Advantage Adventures, Territories Wild, Bass Classic, and you've got some in the works right now, right?
Man, I need 3 amino 48-hour day, Mac. I'm so busy. I don't get to sleep. You can ask my wife that. I never go to bed.
Sounds terrible. So what do you got in the works right now? What are the shows that you're cranking out, or are you allowed to disclose this?
Yeah. So right now I'm focused on real estate. That's where when COVID hit, we've been doing outdoor TV programming for 25 years. And so when COVID hit, it stopped our international travel. And so during that time, it's amazing how things, when something slows down, something else picks up. And I started getting phone calls from land agents to capture their listings. And so COVID didn't stop that. So we were out in the field just about every day filming new properties. And so during that transition, having a production studio, we already have all the equipment to do land. We've got 107 certification for our drones. We've got all the cameras. We do still photography. I do all the editing, music composition, graphics, you name it. We have the whole studio to get all that done. And so when it came to doing real estate, I just brought the same model that we do our ESPN shows, NBC Sports and all that. I just brought the same model over to capture land. The great part about it is that I enjoyed it more because I wasn't stressed doing it, because doing TV production, it's so involved with, you've got multiple crew members on the set. You've got hosts that sometimes they don't want to film. They'd rather hunt. And one thing I can tell you about doing outdoor TV is that it's not about hunting or fishing. It's about production. You got to put production first before you do hunting and fishing. And so it's a lot of backwards production where it's a lot of stop and starting, and you're just not really out there enjoying it like you would be if we just went out with our backpack on and our gun or our bow. And so when we started doing real estate, I enjoyed it more because I didn't have a host or somebody that didn't want to work doing outdoor TV production saying, Jason, I'm only doing this shot once. And so I really enjoyed that transition so much. It gave me a break. I mean, you got to realize 25 years of doing ESPN shows, NBC Sports shows, Outdoor Channel, Sportsman's Channel, and a whole bunch of other networks that, we produce anywhere between 16, 19, or 26 original outdoor shows a year. And so what that means is that if we spend 6 to 8 months filming those shows on the road, well, there's another 6 to 8 months where you're living at this desk where I'm sitting right now, where you'll usually find me about 4:00 in the morning, about like this in my chair, because I passed out because I just can't pull any more hours. And so when we started doing real estate, I really enjoyed the break, so to speak, because we didn't have that those shackles on where somebody didn't want to work. And so it's been a nice transition, so much so that I went ahead and got my license. And so I'm like, well, I've already got everything I need to get this job done, and we don't know how long COVID's going to take. So I went ahead and got my license, and we were doing everything through Zoom like we're doing now. 90% of my class was asleep, in their office or wherever they were asleep while I was sitting there just shaking my head going, how does this work? And so, but you know what, I'm really seeing the talents that we bring to the table and understanding the real estate market to take both of them and merge them together to really create an awesome product that every buyer and seller is going to instantly want to look at as soon as they see the cover photo. And so one thing I can tell you about being a perfectionist and owning a business for so long is that, TV is the same as a book. When you're reading a book, the more descriptive it is, the more you feel like you're enamored in that book. You feel like you're there. Well, TV is very visual. And so the more unique cutaway styles we get, the better photography we get, the aerial shots, the better we get on a multitude of shots, the more we bring the audience into the TV show. And so that's exactly how I approach real estate. I mean, I'm looking at the same format when I'm in the field, capturing this book, so to speak, for people that are going to get on nationalland.com and want to see a property of wherever they're looking. That first photo is going to grab them, and it's going to bring them into that listing. And then the great part about there is that, you've got aerial 360s that they can see the whole property. I've got a multitude of different drones where we're flying over the property. I've got a new drone called the DJI Avata, where it's actually like a bird flying through the property. So you feel like you're actually at ground level, going through the woods, going through the trails, with a combination of trail cameras, still photography. I think we capture the whole property from A to Z. And that's what I love about what we're doing, is that I think, I hear some agents say that, do we need that level of photography? Well, in my opinion, the only way to be successful in our business and TV production is that we had to beat 451 other shows to be the best. And so that means everybody's calling Mossy Oak, everybody's calling Benelli and Can-Am. If you're not that top 10%, you're not going to get those sponsors. And so I don't know any other way to do business but to be absolutely the best you can be, and that's going to be represented through your work that you're doing. So photography is going to set the hook on them to come into into that listing. And so hopefully from there, that's where it's a learning tool for me right now, because I've only had my license since March.
Oh, yeah. So I wanted to rewind real quick. So you were in a position of, you produced several TV shows. You've been doing this for 25 years. And all of a sudden you just get laid up, right? Like COVID hits, nobody's traveling, no one's doing anything. And so you come from this background where it's like you go out and you're in the field and you are kind of at the beck and call of whoever's doing the hunt, right? Like you just kind of capture the moment. And if you miss it, you miss it. You got to be on the ball for that. Draining a little bit. And then you're kind of like stalled out, and you have all of a sudden all these real estate agents that do land and hunting and stuff are calling you up. And so it's got to be this process mentally of like, why am I helping these other guys out if I can just be doing this on my own? Like I can be working with the properties that I'm because it's got to be more enjoyable to just go out. You get to sort of take your time with the listing. You get to kind of do the creative that you want to do on your time. And like, it gets to be more of a creative pursuit on that level. Is that what I'm hearing?
That's exactly right. And that's where I'm trying to merge these two businesses together, is that I'm always, my hands are always on a camera, and I'm always on the edit suite thinking, okay, what's the new lens I can get? What's the new editing software, or what's the new camera I can get, or the new drone? My head is always there. I even had an agent recently tell me exactly that. He goes, Jason, you got to pick one or the other. You got to either pick real estate or you got to pick production. But the way I see it is that, to me, real estate involves all that, because you have to have photos, you have to have videos, you have to have aerials. And so, well, have to might not be the right word, but it definitely helps, to have.
I think there's something that's underestimated with that. The thing I keep on saying when we talk to agents throughout the country is, like, you are who your resume says you are, and the effort that you put in to making a property go live and sort of assembling that presentation. That's what when somebody looks at that, you can kind of tell what kind of effort you're going to get from somebody that you work with to list your own property, because you can look and see their past efforts. And you're like, okay, so this person goes out with like a flip phone and takes photos that are super pixelated, and I can't even tell what I'm looking at. That's probably the effort that you're going to get. But if you're getting a drone fly through, then you're able to show people from around the country. Someone can be in Alabama and look at land in South Carolina, and you get a sense of actually being there with something like a drone fly through. Like, we've seen several properties that sell sight unseen from across the country just because of the presentation that you're talking about, right? Because when sales at its most fundamental level is storytelling. And if you're able to tell a visual story from a listing that you're working with and tell it visually, capture the reader's eyes, or I'm saying reader, capture the viewer's eyes right there out of the get-go, then that's half the battle. I mean, the other pieces are like land use and valuation, and that's the upfront work. But the real dirty work is like, how do I tell this story? What do I get in front of people? That's kind of the work that you're doing, right?
That's exactly what I'm doing. I live production 24/7. And so what I've had to do with getting into the real estate market is I've really relied on the people that have been doing this for a long time to, because think about it, it's not as easy as just, okay, you're going to go out and meet a buyer or seller and you're going to say, okay, you pay, give me a check and the land's yours. There's a lot more detailed contracts and extensions and 1031s and timber value and other things that I just haven't had the experience to learn yet, just because we haven't been in front of it. And so I really rely on those people to help guide me. Now, I think what is a great benefit in what I'm doing is that when I have an agent call me, then the way I see it, it's a partnership, because not only are they teaching me and helping me learn what we need to do in real estate, but what I do is I take off my gloves and I basically go after that property and I do a mini TV show and go on that property and spend countless days or weeks, sometimes months, living on that property, getting all the details of that, of the things that agent can't do. And so to me, it's a symbiotic relationship that it's a win-win. It helps both of us. And so that's one thing I pride myself on with my business and all the awards we've won, including the best overall production for the creation of Whitetail Freaks with Lee and Tiffany, is that I hire the best in the business because I'm only as good as the team that's behind me. And so that's the same here, is that, if you've got 2 or 3 people or a broker working with you and they're training you, but I'm also doing what I definitely know how to do with TV production, then we both win. And that's the whole purpose of selling land. We want the buyer and the seller to win, and we want to help them get to that new lifestyle.
Yeah, and you bring up a really good point as far as, I always try to put myself in the customer's shoes, right? What is the need that somebody has, and that's something that sort of presents itself as you talk to more and more land agents is if you talk to somebody out there, if you're looking to buy property or sell your land and you're talking to somebody and you sort of ask what their specialty and they're like everything, that's probably not the case. Like, somebody that's great in timber might not be so good at farmland, and they don't have to be, but they have to have the resources to get the information. And you're talking about specializing in the photography and then leaning in on the people that have, you're not going to have the ranch knowledge to go out there and be like, okay, so this isn't going to really hold that many cattle in this area, and maybe you should look at alternate uses and how you're going to rotate your herd through this, or what you're doing right here with how you're splitting up between your rec tract and your farmland. You're not really utilizing it right. Like, you've got to be able to have the people that know that and be able to bounce off of each other and get the ideas, which is it is a unique part of National Land where we do have the kind of that network, and I think that's what you're speaking to, right?
It is, and I greatly rely on that advice as I've just started, coming on a year this coming March, and so there's just a lot of things that there's such a plethora of different kind of land or things that you can buy that just hold different aspects of what you really need to understand the value. And so that's where I really rely on people like you, and including everybody that I met at the summit not too long ago, is that it's great to hear all these stories and hear what people have gone through, because then I just make sure that we do it in our world. And that's where I think this style that I bring to the table is just a win-win in every direction. It really is. I mean, I know it's one thing that, if I brought somebody in my studio, I would have to help them along to learn editing. I would help them, learn about the cameras we use and learn about the music rights and everything else. I can't just say, hey, sit down at that edit desk right there and good luck. It really takes me to help mold them. And that's where I see that right now in this juncture of just being a new agent, that's where I'm at, that I really rely on people that can help me in this direction, because you and I both know that contracts get extensive and the wording's got to be exact. And, we've got rules that we've got to play by that they're just not forgiving if you don't know what you're doing on the front end. And so I really rely on people to help me there. But on the backside, when somebody says, Jason, can you go cover this land, just like we're doing on our TV shows that we've done all around the world, I do it in my sleep. I can see it. No matter what direction we want to go and what we want to showcase, I know exactly what we need to do and how to do it. And what comes out of my studio goes straight to TV,
Yeah. So if you're talking to somebody, when it comes to land, right? I mean, it's different than a hunting show, but at the same time, it is storytelling. So what makes a good story? Where do you start?
Being descriptive. The first thing, if a client's going to call me and they're going to say, hey, Jason, can you list my property? We're going to sit down and we're going to go over the details of exactly what that property and the value that it holds. And so, being a TV producer, I'm listening to what their favorite aspects of their lifestyle, what those are. And so, if they've got a great fishing spot, or if they've got a big lake, maybe they've got a great waterfowl impoundment and they do whitetail management, and they've got implementation of flute plots and different kind of tree stands or ground blinds or turkey hunting. There's all sorts of different aspects. Even going, think about a farmer. Just going into the life of a farmer. I can see going to their house and seeing them make their breakfast, and then you see all the details of them getting into their tractor and doing the aerials of following that tractor and the ground being turned and seeing those crops grow. To me, it's just you find out the lifestyle that they're living. And what I'm doing is I'm actually taking what they love about it and I'm capturing that on film to put that in front of a future buyer so that they can feel themselves actually being there. To me, when you can sell a place sight unseen, which we've done on properties, that's pretty amazing that we've gone into that kind of detail so that they feel like they're actually living that lifestyle.
Yeah, and there's a huge contrast in that, right? Between, I do fall back on this probably too often, but like the comparison of, residential real estate versus sort of working with land. Because if when you're working with residential real estate, you're talking about a place that people like stay the night and they cook at and they live in it. But there's something different about the relationship with land. Like you really are. You're talking less about just a place that you live and you're talking about a lifestyle. And so when you're telling that story, you don't think about that up front as like, oh, you're going to tell the story of my farm. Like I wake up and I work my can off and that's the lifestyle, but it's not really that. It's, it's capturing the landscape. It's capturing that topo, like what's around it, Are you tilling a field that's on an incline and how large is it and what's it look like off the front porch? And, you're going to be living here and blood, sweat and tears out in front of you. That's a story and it's a lifestyle. And to be able to tell that visually is fairly important, especially if the buyer isn't able to visit the property right away, right? That's
right. I've got a great story. Recently we listed a piece of property outside of Vicksburg, Mississippi, and the grandparents' generation was selling this property that's been in their family forever. And it turns out that this property was on the Civil War battlegrounds where the Battle of the Big Black River Bridge was fought. And so as soon as I heard that, I instantly started asking questions because you could see the landowner really perk up because they've got so many stories of the artifacts they found on that property. And so as we got to talking and I saw their passion, well, what did I do? I instantly said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go film a TV show on going to get a metal detector. I've never had a metal detector. I went and learned how, which one to get, how to run it. And then I went and met with a guy that's a seasoned detector to tell me the different tones of what kind of metal you're over. And then I actually went out to the property and actually found artifacts that were actually from that battle. And my hair just stood up thinking about it, because that is just an unbelievable history that you hold in that property. But more importantly, you actually saw when we went to the closing table that they sold it, that the grandfather was tearing up because he loved that piece of property so much that he really didn't want to let it go. And so, man, it was a great, it wasn't just going to, I look at real estate more than just buying and selling a piece of land. I mean, this is people's history and family history that's lived on this. And so when you really get to meet these people and really form a bond and a friendship, and then you go above and beyond of being the person that's just helping them with a contract, and you get to know them and you see their passions, that you actually walk away feeling like $1 million because you've helped them go where they want to go. You feel their heartbreak of moving on from a place that they loved, but you also see their excitement as they're going on a new road. And so that's what I try to take out from every listing that we get. I try to really bond with that buyer or seller so that I can help them with that next step in their life.
Yeah, and that kind of thing really matters too. And it's more prevalent in land, right? Like, you talk about U.S. history, we're a fairly young country. You're not exactly going to go out and buy a castle, but the land is very old, and there's a lot of stories to be told around it. And is, even if you're just talking about a working operation, if you're just looking like, I'm going to run cattle on this land, but if there's a history in it, you think about history and you're talking Civil War, and that's obviously, that's an immense amount of history. That's just such a robust story. But it could even be as simple as, hey, this family's been in my, this farm's been in my family for 5 generations or, 3 generations. And, this creek down here used to fish really well. And, little things like that, those nuances, like, you wouldn't think that's irrelevant to a buyer that's looking to do business, but it does matter because you're buying that land, and there's kind of a succession that's there, and it's so important to the people that own it, and it will be important to the next people that acquire it. So it's keeping those storylines alive is kind of essential to the whole process.
It really is, and there's a lot that goes into it, and so there's a lot of work between all the team players that are involved in seeing a closing come through fruition. It's definitely a team effort to get it across the goal line. And so I've enjoyed that side of things. I've also, it's humbled me. I'm going to be honest with you, because, when I started looking into doing real estate photography when COVID hit, I had no idea what went into it. I thought it was just simple, taking like what I normally do with my camera and go and take a picture of a room. But what I learned is that it's far from that. I mean, we're doing between 10 and 15, sometimes 25 different shots of one room, and then we merge and edit all those together to make one finished photograph. And so, man, I was really humbled in what we need to do to really make a property pop. And so much so that, for any business, you're always going to see what your competition is doing. And that's what I did. I researched all my competition, and I saw what their quality was, and I beat it without a doubt. And so that's the only way that I know how to do business. And that's not to be competitive. That's because I want to be the best at what I do. It's just I want people to call me because they want a superior product, not because they want the person that's behind it. So that's what's important.
I was going to say, I wouldn't take that as a bad thing to be competitive like that, because again, putting myself in a customer's shoes, I want that, right? Like, I want somebody that's out there trying to beat the pants off everybody else that sells properties, because I want to see mine at the top, or I want somebody that puts in that effort for me. And that's sort of the key to it is, you want to find somebody that works for you as hard as you want them to work. You don't want somebody to, the 3 Ps, post a sign, put it on an MLS and pray, something like that. I can't remember, like, you don't want like somebody that works at it like that. They take like 3 pictures and throw it up on an MLS and you're done. You want somebody that puts that effort into the storyline. You want somebody that figures out the right image and the right shots and presents your property in the best way possible. And And to boot, they're evaluating your property, well, and they're verifying your water rights, and they're doing all the dirty work, that goes on behind the scenes to get something up and going.
That's right. Well, look at today. Look at the cast net that we have to just get a property to market and what we have to do to advertise it. I mean, this is what's amazing is that, when I was growing up, you saw a sign out in the street and that's who you called. There was no such thing as internet or anything like that. Our phones were on the wall with a cord on it, and so, today, not only do you have to do the photography and the aerials and the editing and the storytelling, but then you got website design, which we do. Then you've got YouTube to reach more clients, and you've got Instagram and Facebook, and then you've got to learn about hashtags and when to post and how to post and the keywords that you use to post. I mean, I'm telling you, I spend so much of my time. I can seriously hire somebody just to handle my social media advertising. And it's so important because it just brings that many more eyeballs to see that property. And that's how you find buyers today. But I tell you what, it's a never ending job to do all that every day. I try to take my morning and make social media posts and try to get those things out there before I head out during the day. But to be honest with you, I could do that all day, every day and never catch up.
And that morning's got to be early because I know you're trying to catch that morning light, right? You got to catch that golden time to get those shots. So you got early morning, huh?
Yeah, and that's the one part I love is that I can tell you this, and this is how I grew up. Is that I grew up hunting and fishing. My grandfather and my father taught me how to fish and taught me how to hunt. And as soon as I was old enough to go out on my own, you couldn't keep me out of the woods or off the lake. We lived on a wooded property with a big lake on it. And that's all I did growing up, so much so that most of the time I was even out there by myself. And so I think that's how I became so independent growing up and even into my career that, when we go on location to film, I'll go to Alaska and I'll tent camp for 28 days out there with brown bears and everything else that wants to eat you to get those shots, And so when we go to Africa, we're there for a month and a half. And living out in the bush, walking with elephants and being one-on-one with those animals to get those perfect shots. And that's exactly what I do on these properties is that if I find out that it's got a healthy wild turkey population, then I'm out there at the crack of dawn and I'm listening to where they're roosting. I'm going to find where they go and I'm going to follow them all day until I get them within that 15-yard range to get that one perfect photograph or that one stretch of video that just showcases that property. And so that's the dedication you need when you're out in the field that I think that, a lot of agents, maybe they don't put that kind of time in to that kind of work, because when I see somebody share one of my photographs, including this one wild turkey shot that I've got, it took me seriously all day, never been on the property, never knew where they were roosting, following them gobbling at me and just wouldn't come in. And finally, cat and mouse playing all day long. And I went back to where they were roosted and they end up coming back that direction, at 7:30 that night, and so I got the perfect shot. And so when I look at those shots, to me, it's not a photograph to me. It's a labor of love that you're out there from, it could be 5 weeks before you get that shot, and so it takes a lot of dedication in the field. But to me, that's what sets this whole path apart from what everybody else is doing is that I'm willing to go out in the field and take that time to capture that shot.
Yeah, and as you're saying this, I'm just seeing your background there in your office, and we usually don't run the videos here for the podcast, but I can describe it to the listener. It looks like something you would see out of when you imagine the old English explorers going out to find the source of the Nile. And it looks like kind of a tent setup, and there's just like wild game animals and artifacts behind you. I'm imagining there's probably some like muzzle loaders back there and stuff from some old.
Yeah. So look, I'll walk you around real quick. So where I'm sitting in front of my edit desk, you can see. So my screen is running, and so that's what I'm looking at when I edit. And so I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 monitors and a client monitor right there that they're watching the video when they come into the studio.
And you don't have an office there. That is a whole vibe.
Yeah. So this is my man cave. I mean, this is where I live. And so as I come all the way back, you definitely see that, it's a big studio. And so, we do a lot of production. We do a lot of music, original music composition up here, but it's definitely, when you talk about artifacts, I'm sitting here, looking at Indian pottery that I found in Kentucky, or this arrowhead that I found in Illinois, or this poacher's bullet that I found in an elephant in Africa. And so, I've got a whalebone from Alaska that when we were brown bear hunting, and I found it on the beach. And so, all these little artifacts in my man cave that, this is where I live. It's, all the bows and all the whitetails up here, a lot of them aren't huge because they mean more to me being up here because these are ones I hunted when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And so this wasn't the ones I hunted when I was doing all the TV, when I was a pro on whitetail country and all that, where we were filming it. These are the ones that you had no clue what was going to show up in front of you when you're growing up. You were just happy to see a deer. And so, when I look at these deer, the big ones downstairs, but these are more important to me because these are the ones I hunted when I was growing up. But yeah, so, it's a man cave, and basically I live up here. A lot of people ask about the studio, and one thing I laugh about is that, so all that equipment and that edit system is actually a house. So it's got a price tag of around $250,000.
Yeah.
That's a lot of money. So
video equipment runs up there. So I was going to ask you, if somebody's working with, normally when somebody work with a land agent, it's usually off a referral, like, hey, I worked with this person, you should talk to them. Or you Google somebody and you find out, like, there's not a lot of people that just keep a land agent in their pocket. Some people do. I'm not going to say that nobody does that. But, somebody comes in and they start, talking with you about your land, and you start telling the story about your land. What are they wanting to look for from, as far as, we talked about effort and you've talked about, what you put into the photography and telling the story and really marketing the property, right? What are the things that somebody wants to focus on, for a land agent when they're working with them?
That's a broad question because
it is a very broad question.
Yeah, because when we get calls, it could be, there's this one piece of property that I showcased, that I'm not an actual agent on, but I showcased it for, I think we spent 5 weeks in the field, another week or 2 weeks in the studio putting it together. But they were looking at that piece of property for the mineral rights, not necessarily, the deer and the turkey that were on it. We got another property that we just listed that, the clients that are interested in this want to create a subdivision out of it. And, so what I'm seeing is that there's a lot of difference, between if somebody's looking for a waterfowl hunting spot, which we get a lot of calls about, or it could be somebody that's looking for the investment side of things. And so it's hard to narrow down just one aspect of what people are coming to. But one thing that when they call me, and this is the value that I like to bring toward the team that we work with, is that, we're here to showcase and capture that property and help you sell it to the best of our abilities. And that goes above and beyond, a simple cell phone picture, and that lens on that cell phone is probably cloudy, dirty. They don't clean their lens. And so, I think that, with the knowledge that agents need to know what that land holds, know the value of possibly the timber, if that needs to be it, or if the mineral rights are involved, or a 1031 exchange, that's all things that are important to know when those questions are asked. And so, but that's what I'm working.
I was going to say, I thought of a way to narrow it down, because everything that you just said is spot on, right? Like you want somebody, you're going to subdivide the land, right? You need somebody that understands like the commercial zoning of the area. If you want to harvest timber, you need someone that's going to be able to walk in and tell you like you could, but your crown spacing is terrible. You got to thin this out a little bit. There's different little things like that you want brought to the table. Talk to me about, from your perspective, as far as, your strength in particular, because everybody has a strength, and yours is definitely the art of storytelling and marketing a listing and getting that in front of people in a way that is going to catch their eye more than other agents are going to do. From that perspective, what would somebody want to work with? Because, I mean, you're not all over the country. You're in your area, and everybody should contact you in your area. But what about those areas that you're not? Somebody wants to work with somebody, and they want that sort of skill set.
Yeah, that's interesting that you bring that up, because I'm actually working on trying to be all over the country.
Are you trying to be all over the country? You taking all the state tests?
I am trying to take a test in every state to cover everything.
Sounds like nightmare fuel to me. I'm terrified of that.
Yeah, my ambition never sleeps. You can ask my wife that. She's going to find me dead in this chair. And so no, I'm actually looking at the whole ball of wax. I'm actually trying to figure out.
So let's rewind that then. If you're anywhere in the country,
that's what I'm trying to do. Now I've got to get past Mississippi right now, but yeah. So what I'm wanting to do is I'm wanting to actually take national land, and I want to take all their photography and all their storytelling and all their video, and I want to make it look like a cinematic movie. And to me, when you do that, everybody wins. Not only does the buyer and seller wins, but the company as a whole wins, because we have a great look and we have a great brand. And so with that being said, it's going to take a lot of teamwork from other people in other states to figure out how we can do this. And so this is where the rabbit hole really goes down pretty far, because you're trying to figure out how we're going to pay for this, because TV production is not cheap. I mean, not only is the camera gear expensive, but you got to travel, you got hotel fees, you got FedEx, you got hard drives, you got memory cards, drones, drone insurance, licensing for 107, editing, music rights you have to pay for, photography, editors, graphics, and all that costs money, and all that takes time. And so what I'm trying to figure out is, how do we take this model and figure out how we can win and get this going where I know for a fact that I can take it. And I know with all these pieces of property that we get, that there's a story on every one of them. I know there is. Now I just need to figure out how I'm going to get there and capture it on film.
Nope. Well, it's operating at scale, right? Like that's the issue, that every organization that has a niche, or every organization that tries to grow ends up with a scale issue. And that becomes something that everyone, has to solve at some point or another. So when you go in, what's the first thing you do? Like you mentioned, just like, do you just walk the property, you talk to the person, how do you get a feel for a listing when you go in there to tell a story?
Yeah, so I'm definitely going to spend the majority of my time with the landowner and the people that actually know it. If they've got a guide or if they've got a land manager, then I'm going to spend a considerable amount of time getting all those details of exactly what that land has to offer. And then I'm going to sit down and I'm going to figure out how I'm going to capture that on film and capture the story. And so this is where my TV production comes involved, where I'm trying to figure out, okay, are we going to capture time lapses of the house and do a twilight shot? We're going to maybe showcase the person working the land. Maybe we capture a hunt or go fishing with the homeowners and kind of get a feel of what their lifestyle has been. And so, that to me is one of the hardest parts, because that could take time. We spent 5 or 6 weeks on a place called Pecan Point, and we actually captured the whole seasons. We captured between waterfowl and turkey season, and then fishing season, whitetail season, them harvesting crops and things like that. And so that took weeks to do, and so when you're trying to capture that over time, that can get expensive. It can also get expensive on my end, because I'm the one that's actually paying for it all. I'm actually fronting all the money for the gas and the camera gear and the editing and paying the music rights and paying the graphics team. And so it gets real expensive on my end. And what we're seeing on the turnaround is that we're putting the money out in hopes that we're going to get it down the road. And so that's the business aspect, that we're trying to bring this model to showcase these properties, but we're also trying to make sure that we can keep the business going as we go. Because you and I know that if you did that once a week, and all that's going out. Sometimes properties can take years to sell. And
right.
So that gets expensive quick.
You bring up Pecan Point, and that's a listing that, for those listeners that are wondering, like, oh man, they spent like months on a property. Like it's just a chunk of grass, right? Like, no, this is not a chunk of grass. This is a world-class property that you're talking about. And spending that kind of time, like that just adds to the equation, right?
Oh man, it's beautiful. It's perfect. I'm telling you, man, if I had a checkbook, I would have already bought it because it's gorgeous. It's on the Mississippi River. There's turkeys and whitetails and hunting galore, fishing galore, waterfowl. And so, when I got to spend all that time over there showcasing that property for the agents, I really got to know that property one-on-one. And so, and that goes back to your question on how I figure out how to showcase them. Is that, I'm a hunter first and foremost. Second, I'm a producer and a storyteller. And so when I know what those key aspects are on that property, then that's what I start going after and just spending time in the field, chasing those elements and capturing the essence of that property.
And this one, I had to look it up real quick while you were talking, because I couldn't remember the acreage on it off the top of my head. You're talking 6,000 acres that you're telling the story on, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's a lot.
You're not exactly going to like rip this thing out and walk it in a day.
No. I've walked most of it, chasing turkeys and whitetails, and I've seen everything that property has to offer. It's beautiful. And
for those listening that are thinking of looking at where to list a property, I think that sort of answers the question is that is the kind of effort that you want out of somebody that you're working with. Is you want somebody that's willing to spend the time to get to know the land, because it's the storytelling is one piece of it, but the other piece of it is land sales work a little differently than, your typical real estate transaction. Sometimes the buyer and the seller side are collaborating on the tour of the property, and because somebody has to know it. You can't just take the buyer's agent onto the property and, take the potential buyer and just go like, okay, here's an ATV, have fun. That's right. Not going to tell you exactly what. So you've got to have somebody that's willing to know the property just as well as the owner, and to be able to take a prospective buyer through it and to be able to familiarize them as quick as possible, really, because, when someone comes to tour a property, 1-2 days, some of them will take you for a huge thing. They'll spend like, 3-4 days there. But you want somebody that puts in that effort, right? To do the legwork.
Oh, without a doubt. Because, the majority of those properties, it comes with a heavy price tag, and people definitely want to know what they're buying. And so there's no way to showcase it unless you absolutely know everything about that property. And so you can tell if you don't know it, and you got to go back to the well to figure out what those questions are, that sometimes they get a little frustrated. And so, but here's the thing is that, we've got to do the job at the best of our abilities, and we might not have the answer right off the bat, but we can always get it, and so that's where it's a learning tool. We're here to showcase it with what we know, and if we don't know it, we're going to go back to the owners and ask them and give them their due diligence to make sure that we get them the proper information.
So I want to flip the script on what I'm asking you now. Like, so somebody's looking at past sold listings from an agent. Maybe they're not too familiar with what makes something good to sell. What makes a bad listing? When you're looking at it online, what's a bad one look like? And I don't want you to throw anybody under the bus that we know or love. No,
I wouldn't. I would never do that. Being descriptive. I think being descriptive to make sure that they're telling everything that they know about the property, because you got to realize we've got the tools of 360 to where you can actually see the whole details of that property from an aerial view, and you can scroll around and actually see points of interest, and you can see exactly where the directions are, and you can see if they've got trail cameras in one location, or maybe they have got a 360 on the ground, or videos on the ground. And so when they're there, you're taking the most of their time, because people have a short attention span these days. And so if you don't have all that in place, then they might just look at it and say, okay, those cell phone pictures are cloudy and they're terrible, and I'm just going to click off because I don't like it. Well, that's where it's, in my opinion, it's extremely important to make sure that you are telling the full story so that you are doing the right job. That's what I see is that, the big thing to me is being a stickler about photography. Even though if you didn't do video or do aerials, the photography should be stellar. And that's going to take a little bit of an investment to get a camera that's a good one to be able to showcase those properties. The descriptions are the second aspect that I would look at that, okay, maybe they need to improve on. As far as showcasing the properties, making use of Facebook and Instagram to showcase those so you get as many people to see them as possible. And then, when you get the phone calls, being able to go out and show those properties. And so, and I tell you what, it's a lot to do. It's a lot of expense to do, and to do it right. And so, sometimes you're in a hurry up and wait kind of mode to do your job, to showcase the property right in hopes that somebody's going to call about it.
Yeah, I was going to throw in there too, the ability, for any agent that you're working with to feed that listing to aggregator sites as well. Different partnerships that we work with in the land industry are different than what people work with in commercial and are different than people work with in residential. But what you do is you get the biggest user base, right? There's a reason that Zillow was named by the Oxford English Dictionary as a verb, right? You use Zillow something now. It's an actual word that they put into the Oxford, right? So, hey there, listener. This is embarrassing. No, I just need to do a disclaimer here. Google was added to the Oxford English Dictionary. Zillow was not. However, you may still use it as a normal part of your lexicon. You may Zillow something if you choose. You just won't find it in the Oxford. Just a reminder to everybody out there, always fact check, including podcast hosts. Always fact check. Back to the show. It's because it accumulates so many viewers in it. You want to be able to work with somebody that can feed listings on a nationwide level and a worldwide level. I mean, because that's the expanse that those sites get, and as well as their own website. Like that's something the National Land works on, and everybody in our industry works on that. To be able to get that awareness out there and get in front of people is something that's kind of paramount to really exposing the property out there. And then to what you just said, utilizing social media. That's such probably an underutilized thing just across the board in every level, across any niche of real estate that you see out there. Maximizing that is such an essential skill that you see.
It really is. And I'll tell you this, I spend a tremendous amount of time on YouTube. I mean, if I don't know how to do something, I am on YouTube, Googling it, going, okay, how do you do this? And I'll sit there and watch videos on it all day long to make sure that, okay, what's this software do? Or what's this camera do? Or, it's amazing how that tool can teach you. And that goes back to, people that don't know about photography. You can get on there and Google search, how to camera work 101, and they'll teach you all about photography. And so, I just take advantage of all the tools that we have. But it's consuming. It takes a lot of my time. And I live in the studio and I live in the field doing it. And, I wouldn't know anything else. I mean, I love doing it, even the hours that it takes. And sometimes, it's an investment that you're putting into yourself to see where you want to go. But the harder you work, the better the payoff. And so, in this direction, this is where I'm hoping this will go with me being new to the industry to learn. Well, I already know those tools, so I'm hoping that I can implement them to help us
expand. Yeah. Well, that's a lot of what you've illustrated here today too. I think really goes on to, I do keep on hearing the stories of agents that are working with landowners that are like, well, I don't want to give somebody commission, for selling my property. And you're like, well, they really kind of frown on that part of it. But there's so much work that goes on behind the scenes. Like, can you sell your property just on your own and do it for sale by owner? Yes, absolutely. How much time you got? Like,
that's right.
What's your resources? What's your knowledge base? Who can you call to get the knowledge base when you don't have it in front? Like, those things all happen, but the amount of work that goes on behind the scenes just to get like the right shot, the right description, to be able to assess the value of timber or farm or ranch land, there is a lot of work in that.
Oh my Lord. Yes, there is. Here's an example. So if you look at just the agent and the time that they spend in the field, with the price of gas these days, they're spending $100, $150 for that day to meet a client out in the field to showcase that property. Well, it doesn't stop there. They're going to have a truck, and then they're probably pulling a side-by-side. Well, there's another $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 for that side-by-side to get around on that property. And so you're talking about an expensive day. Well, when you start looking at what I'm taking into the field, just for example, on Pecan Point, you're looking at $5,000 a week. So you're looking at a $25,000, $35,000 turnaround on that project that we did for that property in hopes that we sell it to get paid. And so that's where things can get real stressful real quick when you're doing a lot of those shoots. And so, but that's where, the investment of what you're doing, is worth the reward because you're representing that property and that buyer and that seller right to actually help them sell that property. So, yeah, it's a job. Without a doubt, selling real estate, no matter if it's residential, commercial, it's a job, and it takes a lot of expense on the front end to sell on the back end.
Yeah, and you've done an amazing job at kind of illustrating that out to where somebody, I think somebody could listen to this and go, "Oh, I don't want to do that. I better call an agent."
Yeah, right. That's right. There's no other way that I would do it.
Exactly. Well, hey, had you, I don't want to kill off your afternoon here, but as you take over the country with all of your real estate tests, tell me, tell any listener here how they're going to find you.
So you can find me one of two ways. Obviously, with National Land, you can look up National Land Realty, Jason Miller on Facebook. You can find me that direction.
In there.
Yep. And then you can also find me at my company's name is Raven, the number 6 Studios, raven6studios.com.
Whoops, your mic just cut out. Hit it with a rock.
But
there you go. You're back. The last 5 seconds here cut out.
Yeah, the boss was calling me, and so I had to turn off her call.
Oh, I got you.
Yeah. So, but no, Raven 6 Studios is the name of my company. And so if you want to see the kind of TV shows that we produce, you can go to raven6studios.com, and that's the number 6. And so, that's what I do in a nutshell. And that's my passion without a doubt.
Awesome. Jason, I absolutely appreciate your time, man. And I appreciate your expertise. I get a big kick out of it, man, as far as like all the things that you have going on. Feel very privileged to have you on here. So thank you very much for your time.
Mac, I appreciate you more, buddy. You're teaching me way more than I'm teaching you right now. So, hey, if I could keep you on the phone all day, I'd be talking real estate until I bored you to death. So I appreciate y'all more.
Awesome. Thank you, man.
Take care, bud.
This concludes episode number 33 for the National Land Realty Podcast, discussing the importance of quality photography and video with land professional Jason Miller from Jackson, Mississippi. You can learn more about land ownership and the buying and selling of land at nationalland.com.